don't run away yet. I think we have a lot of interesting issues to address actually. So a little bit about my background. I wore too many hats over my career. So I'd like to say I'm the ultimate quadruple helix. So I've worked 5 years in MOSTI, I've worked 10 years in academia, I've been managing tech transfer, and now I'm a startup founder as well. 6 months. And also, so I'm the silver hair economy. Watch out for us. And finally, I'm part of the community as well, as you all are. You know? And what I find over my career is that everybody has a different perspective to how, to what the problem is actually. And this is the biggest problem. We're not entirely on the same page most of the time. And this is something we really need to address when we talk about bringing disruptive technology all through the value chain. So policies. Malaysia, we are great at policies, and honestly, you know, we really have some of the most complete and comprehensive policies. One of my first pet peeves is that nobody reads it. So it's a very tiring process when you're managing technology and technology innovators and researchers, is that they're not aware that there's such a framework exists in their own domains. And I think this is a very important sort of a shortcoming that in a short while I'll perhaps, you know, look to what I think could be done better. So in terms of innovators, in terms of R&D, Malaysia has no lack in talent. I think we've heard from this morning as well. Talent is not a problem. I mean, I really like the healthcare panel. I mean, they're not worried about talent really. They're really worried about how we are going to move up the value chain and to use the support that's available to do this. You know, so one step back. So I'm a life scientist, and as Prof. Hassan has said, it is a domain which is very heavily regulated. Especially like in the field, just as an example of facilitative policy and regulations. I work in the field of genetic engineering. Very tough, because there are a lot of perceptions, right or wrong, about the technology. There's also a lot of hope for the technology. You know, we can see the progress, and I think COVID in a little bit has helped us. Everybody now is a virologist, everybody now is a molecular biologist. We all know what mRNA is, which is incredible. But, and it also highlights, you know, you can see the discussion about how was such a technology able to be put into play so quickly when it was needed. Whereas in the real world of regulatory frameworks and policy, life science really is a long haul process. Yeah, somehow we are more in fear of living innovation than we are of physical innovation. Yeah. And it's just one of those things. So, but it's not Malaysia. This is internationally, it's very heavily regulated. And Malaysia has put into place all these regulations. And now that we have NTIS, it's very exciting. It is time, I think, that we need to address how we can really speed up some of the processes. The way we were able to do it for COVID, for instance, when we really needed the technology. And we really need some of the technologies now. For instance, like for agriculture. We are not solving the problems as Prof. said. We are not facing the issues that we need to face. And if you're talking about some of the issues we need to face, many of them can be addressed perhaps by introduction of new technologies. But the new technologies that we have really are heavily regulated. And it is really time to look at how we create new regulations, and perhaps as a sandbox in itself. Not so much as a particular application, but how we regulate the use of science and to compare all the current regulations. For instance, the regulation for genetic engineering is actually under a criminal act, so that means to say if you don't comply, if you don't declare your work or you bring in a genetically engineered molecule or something, you can be fined up to $100,000. You can be jailed up to 3 years. There can be a search and seize of your, you know, my researchers, when they just read that page, they tak payahlah kau. Takut, you know, takut you made a mistake, you know, you forgot to record something, you forgot to tell your undergraduate, you know, don't throw it in the drain. You know, that's a criminal offense to throw it in the drain, you know. So it is, there's a disproportionate sometimes, and it's not the regulator's fault that it was done that way. It was our compliance to international requests or our international, so what I'm trying to point out is there is a disconnect a little bit in terms of the researcher trying to get his technology into market, and regulator who is just trying to do his job to regulate. Because I've been a regulator before. I was part of the, unfortunately, the drafting of the Biosafety Act, for instance, but not the punitive damages level. All we were trying to say is, of course, we need to regulate, just as we have to regulate medicines, just as we have to regulate drones. We have to ensure safety of our people. But we need to find the medium, and where is the problem that I see? And I haven't even begun to talk about the entrepreneurs who are trying to come in. Yeah, it's the disconnect is really the disconnect. Is that we don't talk enough. There's not enough communication between developers, innovators, regulators, and the people who implement the laws, and that people who implement the laws sometimes are left in the dark when regulators do regulate and science does its science, and suddenly the implementers are just implementing whatever rules that has. So communication, how are we going to bridge that? How are we going to have more chances for end users or end users of policies and regulations to have more communication channels with policymakers? So that is, you know, a question I keep asking even after all these years. Yeah, there's still gaps where the needs or the concerns of scientists are not addressed directly. Maybe the fault of the scientists themselves. We are all stuck in our lab, and we don't think about anything else until it's too late, you know. And that's another point, you know. We always think about the next step after we've done all the academic work, you know. And that again is also something we need to address. I'll stop there for now.
I think we'll do quick three now. So the second round, I just want to touch a bit more on.
Because, you know, we are altering genomes, we are introducing strange hybrids and all that. And even the sandbox, I think, can't cope with that. But technology moves so fast, you know, in the biological sciences, and now we have something called gene editing. And gene editing has brought a paradigm shift. And, you know, you'd be surprised, there are so many labs in Malaysia already now researching gene editing, has introduced gene editing as a tool, and we are really ready to go to the next step. So where's the constraint really? So the constraint, of course, regulations, or the lack thereof. So another thing that we face in the life sciences when disruptive technology comes is that regulations cannot keep up. So we're still stuck with the wordings of regulation, the more traditional molecular technologies, and there's no mechanism to quickly respond to new technologies. So that is something perhaps we can use the sandbox to address. Like, how do we, you know, introduce new technologies quickly so we don't get left behind? Because we haven't even got our technologies yet, and yet countries like Japan have already commercialized their first two RNA edited products. The India has deregulated. In other words, if you use gene editing, it's not considered genetic engineering. The same with the UK, and of course the European countries all have deregulated as well. So, you know, we're a little bit aware, we're thinking still about regulation, so we need to move faster. And again, you know, I challenge the scientists to ask for this, you know, to get into the sandbox, to move it. And we need of course, the receiving environment. Societies believe they can solve the problem, but the reality is we're not going to be the one taking it out to the field. So we need more people to be interested in disruptive technology. So, it's a question of throwback to Prof. Azman. Do we have enough innovative entrepreneurs who can challenge regulations and really try and bring disruptive technology in? Because it's hard, it's difficult, right?
Okay, maybe this last